Hello, everybody. My name is Andrew Harvey, and I'm the writer of The Hope, a guide to sacred activism, which created the global movement of sacred activism that, thank God, is inspiring so many people at this moment to rise up to the challenge of this vast and very dangerous world crisis, this global dark night that we find ourselves in. It's a tremendous honor for me to address directly my beloved LGBTQ community because I was the first major teacher to really come out from the very beginning of my career. And it's been a very wild ride being an openly gay teacher of spirituality, but it's a ride I would never have missed for all the tea in China because it's been thrilling to see how many profound advances in acceptance of the gay community that there has been. I never believed in my whole life that gay marriage would now be accepted by 70% of the American public and so many people all over the world. And it is very moving for me as I approach 70 to begin to think that all the pain and the suffering and the difficulty that we lived through in our generation with its horrific outbreak of AIDS and all the prejudice and the madness that we had to meet will not be met by the wonderful young gay men and women that I meet all the time who are so lovely and empowered and intelligent and rooted in joyful self-acceptance. So that thrills me. But I'm also aware, and I know that you are aware, that we still have a long way to go. I heard the most devastating statistic the other day that 42% of LGBTQ people who are in their teens think about suicide. And some of them, of course, commit it. And this is scary. So don't let's become complacent at the tremendous advances that we've made as a community. Let's always, always keep fighting peacefully for the recognition of us as dignified human beings, absolutely deserving of being treated equally and with truth and compassion as every other human being. I want to say something very particular too about the transgender community. I am fortunate enough to have several transgender friends who I admire beyond anything for their courage, for their incredible capacity to weather still unspeakable prejudice and cruelty. And I'm aware too, through my goddaughter, who is officially this week anyway, pansexual, who has pointed me to all the brilliant transgender people on the web who are delivering messages of incredible depth and breadth of just how nobly so many people in the transgender community are stepping up, not just to defending their own rights, which they're doing with splendid eloquence, but to defending and calling for justice and harmony and compassion on every level of society. Because they're showing us something I think is very, very important. And that is that the suffering that we've been through in fighting for justice and dignity and human rights is a suffering that we now need to transmute to make us advocates for justice on every level. I know from my own inmost experience that being gay and going through what I went through in my 30s and 40s in so many different crises and agonizing conflicts was an immense wake-up call to the agony and suffering that the whole world is in, and the whole of nature and the whole of the animal world. And there is a direct connection in my own life between what I went through as a gay man and what I learned about patriarchy as a gay man, what I learned about hypocrisy and cruelty and prejudice, and the sacred activism that I was fortunate enough to be able to help craft for others. So, what I'm saying to you, my friends, is Use what you are learning in the core of your life about the craziness of the culture and the society that we've been born into to really stand up now as sacred activists, to advocates for the animals, to be advocates for environmental change, to join Greta Thunberg in her Great Extinction Rebellion quest, to join all the different amazing forces that are arising now to become birthers and midwives and warriors of a new world. I have a dream, like Martin Luther King had a dream, and that is that the LGBTQ community, because it has been through so much, because it knows the score, because it's suffered, because it's understood from its own experience the suffering of others, can be one of the most exciting, thrilling, empowered groups that rise up peacefully in this dreadful time to really start co-creating a new world. And my dream is that gay people everywhere will become conscious sacred activists and use what they know about oppression to start being advocates for the ending of oppression on every level. So let me just say something simple to you about sacred activism. And if you haven't heard that term before, I hope that bringing those two words together, sacred and activism, will thrill you, because the force that results from the fusion of deep spirituality and stamina and spiritual strength with wise, urgent, radical action is, I believe, and many people now believe on the earth, the force that can help us birth a new world out of the smoldering ashes of the old. So, how do you become a sacred activist? How do you claim your sacred activist, divine human identity as a gay person? It isn't difficult, it isn't rocket science. The first thing you do is recognize that we truly are in what could be an extinction crisis, and that what's needed now on the earth is millions and millions of people rising up peacefully in a passion of love in action, in a passion of deep spiritual understanding of the crisis, deep spiritual identification with all of life, and the commitment to put that knowledge and that identification into real, wise, urgent action. The second thing that you need to know is that you cannot, in such a difficult situation, find the strength and the stamina and the courage and the perseverance and the fortitude if you don't start to have a spiritual practice that grounds you in the core of your being. I'm not someone who believes that you should join a religion or have a guru. I'm someone who knows that the divine is here and is living in you and me, and as you and me, and that the original blessing we've all been given is divine consciousness, that we can discover as real if we do simple, wonderfully powerful forms of spiritual practice. So I'm begging you all to get down with real spiritual practice. Plunge into meditation, plunge into mindfulness. That's a marvelous training that gives you the calm witness consciousness that can enable you to understand your psyche and ground yourself in peace. Plunge most of all, and this is what I would recommend to you all, into the saying of the divine name. What is this practice? This practice has been recommended by all the mystical traditions as the most wonderful way to claim your direct connection with the divine. It's a very simple practice, but it's, in my experience, the most powerful. Find a name for the divine, for the spirit, for the source, whatever you call it, that you truly love and honor. It could be Jesus, it could be Kali, it could be Buddha, it could be any of the names of any of the great mystical teachers and pioneers of history. And then very tenderly and very strongly start to say that name in your heart. All the great understanders of this amazing practice tell us that it doesn't matter what name you choose, because the divine will use that name as a way of focusing its power on your heart center and opening you up to direct divine instruction. This isn't poetry. This is something I've experienced and hundreds of thousands of other people have experienced. And what I found in my own sacred activism is that having a simple practice that you can turn to constantly in all the hustle, bustle, and agony and difficulty of real work in the real burning world is an amazing grace. So get with that practice. And then look around at the world. And my God, there's so much suffering going on every level. And ask yourself one very powerful question. It's an amazing question if you really ask yourself this question honestly. Extraordinary things happen. Ask yourself, as a member of the LGBTQ community, what of all the tremendous sufferings out there breaks your heart the most? When I heard this question, which I heard as a kind of in a dream vision, as the essential question that we should all be asking ourselves, I realized that what breaks my heart the most in this terrifying situation is the appalling treatment of animals. I am a wild lover of animals. I live with the most beautiful cat in the world, the garbo of cats, Jade, who is currently asleep with her legs apart in the sun. And I feel at the most primordial level the pain that we're inflicting on animals. But that heartbreak at what we're doing to animals has led me to write a book called Saving Animals from Ourselves with Carolyn Baker, to advocate for animals at the UN, to join with all kinds of animal organizations to be available to them to help inspire people, and to support the wonderful work of my co-conspirator and co-creator of Sacred Activism, Jill Angelo, who runs out of her own home a sanctuary for battered dogs called Moon Dog Farm. And look it up, it's amazing. And if you have a few dollars to give them to her, because she's working on with no money to save hundreds and hundreds of dogs that have been through horrific circumstances. What breaks your heart the most? What really, really makes you suffer in the core of your being, and that you find almost intolerable to think about because it's so painful? If you can locate that, you will locate the cause that you're being asked by the divine to stand up for. Because it's been my experience that if you connect with your deepest heartbreak and recognize that it is calling you to do something real about it, then what you also connect with is a tremendous inner passion, a tremendous inner focus, a tremendous inner no to the structures of cold evil that are causing this heartbreak, but also a tremendous yes to the ending of those structures so that the beings that are caught in them can be liberated and released. So trust me on this. And if there's anything I could most specifically advise you to is to, for example, in the next week or so, get up in the early morning when the veils are thin and when the telephones aren't ringing. Do simple meditation and say the divine name, and then ask yourself that question: what breaks my heart the most? Many of you will come up with the heartbreak of still feeling that the gay community and the transgender community are not sufficiently respected. Well, then get together with your friends and start thinking of strategies to get over the absolute necessity of all gay and transgender people being treated with dignity. What this means is creating what I call networks of grace. This came to me in a vision, actually, because I was staying in a monastery in Ohio with some wild old nuns who had caused radioactive mischief for a very long time and were real. real spokespeople of Christ. And I asked one of the old nuns, Sister Rosa, how to organize people, how to give people a way of organizing themselves in their ordinary lives so that they could feel sustained and empowered by others. And she said, I don't know, but why don't you go and sit in the chapel and ask the Christ? This is the way she did everything. So I thought I would do it, and I did. And that night I had a dream, and it was an incredible dream. And in that dream, I saw two banners being lowered in the sky. And one said, joy is the power. A very good instruction. Find your joy and fill yourself with it, because that's what's going to give you power. Your heartbreak is your guide into your mission, but the joy that you cultivate in the core of life is what gives you energy to fulfill your mission. And then on the other banner were written the words networks of grace, networks of grace. And because it was, I believe, a divinely inspired dream, what I immediately got is that the way in which the great nonviolent revolution of sacred activism is going to be organized in the world is through people like yourself and myself, ordinary, extraordinary people, who collect together between 8 and 15 friends who are passionate about the same cause and start meeting together once every 2 weeks, say, and eating and celebrating each other and loving each other and praying together, and then start working on that cause in their own local communities, start really empowering each other to do something real. Networks of grace have now gone all over the world. So I'm asking the LGBTQ community, all of you, to start identifying what you most deeply care about and reach out to your gay friends, to your straight friends, to your pansexual friends, to all the different varieties of everything, and start creating living networks of grace in your own lives so that you will feel less alone, so that you feel accompanied, so that you feel that you have sacred friends to help you as you become more real about really stepping up to meet this tragic and dangerous crisis with real love and real sacredly inspired action. If you want to know more about the map that I've created for sacred activism, which is now being used by people of all sexualities and kinds all over the world, please have a look at The Hope, A Guide to Sacred Activism, because it took 20 years to write. A lot of pain and revelation went into it, and it has helped hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people, to find a very pragmatic, practical way of really grounding their lives in the sacred as they understand it, and starting to empower themselves through that connection with the sacred to come together to begin in their own lives this revolution of love in action that is the one way that we can use this terrible crisis to become midwife warriors of a wholly new way of being and doing everything. As gay people, you've already shown how brave you are because you've stood up for love and truth and dignity and human rights in the face of sometimes excruciating opposition and prejudice. Now take that courage that you know you have and use it not just to elevate the dignity of the gay community, but to fight peacefully for the rights of indigenous peoples, of peoples of color, people who've been marginalized and despised, of the animals. Use it to become, in other words, midwife warriors of the birth of a new humanity. You are the bravest of the brave, and we need you. We need you now to put that courage that you've acquired through your own suffering and struggle into the struggle to birth a new world of harmony, justice, and compassion for every single sentient being. My heart is with you. My love is with you. My faith is with you. And as long as I'm on the earth, you'll find in me a friend, always willing to pour myself out to encourage you and to give you the joy and the passion and the focus that I've received from claiming my divine identity and the mission of sacred activism that governs and focuses my life. God bless you. I hope I get to meet many of you in the years to come. And I am so proud of what you have already accomplished. But there is a glorious, rich, powerful work ahead. And that is what I'm calling you to.